I would like to talk about freedom of religion in the United States of America. Just let me give you a background. Of course, as an ordained minister and general superintendent of the United Pentecostal Church International, certainly I have a great love for religious freedom and believe that we should be free to practice our beliefs. I'd also like to say that I was trained as a lawyer. I went to the University of Texas Law School, which is one of the top 10 law schools in the nation, and I was in the top 3% of the class, a member of the Texas Law Review. And in constitutional law was one of my favorite classes. In fact, I received an award for the top grade of the class. And I only mention this to say I have more than a passing interest and more than a passing knowledge of constitutional law. Now, I'm an inactive member of the State Bar of Texas, so I haven't been directly involved in legal research for many years. But I've tried to keep up with this area of the law because it is so important to us as Christians. So I'd like to make a few comments. Religious freedom is established in the U.S. Constitution in the First Amendment, and I think that's appropriate because religious freedom is really the foundation of all other rights that we have as human beings. The Declaration of Independence makes it very clear that rights do not come from government, but rights come from God. Therefore, they're unalienable. In other words, you cannot take them away. Government may trample on those rights, but government has no right to take away these basic human rights. And the first one is religious freedom, because that deals with freedom of conscience. That deals with the personal relationship between a human being and his or her creator. If you take away religious freedom, then freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of the press, all the other First Amendment freedoms will fall like dominoes. So I believe it's very important in our day to defend religious freedom. Now, there are two aspects of religious freedom that are mentioned in the First Amendment. That is, the government will not establish a religion. The government will not officially endorse or support one religion above the others. And we believe that because if the government promoted one religion, it probably would not be the apostolic Pentecostal message. Even if it did, the very fact that government is supporting it and promoting it would tend to discredit it in the eyes of many others. So we're much better off with the government staying out of the religion business altogether and letting us have freedom to promote our message. We'll accomplish more by the power of God, by the preaching of the Word and the work of the Holy Spirit than we would with government support. So we're not asking the government to support our religious faith instead of others. We're asking the government to get out of the religious business altogether. And that's what the Establishment Clause does. The second clause is the Free Exercise Clause. And that means in America we have freedom to exercise our own religion. This includes absolute freedom of belief. You cannot put someone in jail because of what they believe. Unfortunately, we see encroachment of this liberty. It's pronounced in Europe, even in Canada, whereas if you take a stand, for example, against homosexual behavior, then you can actually be fined if you make these statements publicly. In America, at least so far, that's impossible because the First Amendment has always been understood to mean you have an absolute right to say and believe what you want to believe because of freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of press. But we've got to be careful because under the guise of hate speech or hate crime, it's possible that thoughts could be deemed criminal or expressions could be deemed criminal. And we've got to stand against any reinterpretation of our fundamental rights. Now, free exercise also means that great deference should be paid whenever people are acting out of their religious convictions. However, this right is not absolute. For example, if someone says, well, I believe in human sacrifice, the law would say, too bad. You can believe it, but you can't practice it. If you do, you'll go to jail or you could even be executed. Likewise, if your religion says I can use drugs, illegal drugs, or I can abuse animals or something like that, the law can intervene and say, no, you cannot. You can believe it, but you can't practice it because it's contrary to public policy. But whenever the law steps in like that, under current interpretation of the law, the government cannot single out a religion or a religious practice. So, for example, it cannot say, well, religious people cannot abuse animals, but everybody else can. Or religious people cannot use certain drugs, but everybody else can. It can't single out a religious practice. It has to have a neutral law that applies to everyone, that doesn't have an intent to discriminate against religion, but because it's a public policy, it might affect religion, somebody's religious practices. The other thing is that when there is a religious practice involved, the government must use the least restrictive means of fulfilling its own public policy. So where there is a compelling state interest that overrides this practice of religion, the government still has to give deference to choose the least restrictive alternative to fulfill its legitimate purpose. So the government is not supposed to come in heavy-handed and say, we have an interest here, so we're just going to wipe away your religious practices totally. It has to say, no, we have a strong public policy interest in our nation. We're not trying to restrict religion, but your religion interferes with our strong public policy. Therefore, we're going to try to have the least impact on your religion that we can.
It's a beautiful country. It's multiracial, just like Malaysia. It's a melting pot. And I find it very interesting. You could see so many different cultures, ethnicity. So my first question is that, how do you maintain the cordial relationship between the different diverse people in the States?
The diversity of America's population is really one of the glories of America. It is one of the extraordinary treasures of American life. So many different people came to America fleeing persecution and oppression in different countries, and came for an opportunity to build their lives for themselves and their families so that their children would have better lives. So we are a mix, probably the most religiously diverse, ethnically diverse, racially diverse country in the history of the world in that regard. And it means we have the benefit of learning from different cultures and being enriched by the cultural contribution that these different groups bring to American life. One of the secrets of it that talks to my work dealing with religious freedom is, in the United States, we do things a little bit different than other democracies. The government stays out of religion entirely. It doesn't help religion, but it is absolutely barred from being in the way of religion. And religion, people in their religious life are able to build their own religions, which flourish with the diversity and strength because of no government control or interference, in a way that works really well for us. And interfaith coalitions and cooperation are extraordinarily strong in America. We're all working together to make America a better country. I think those are some of the key ingredients of what makes it work in the United States.
And I believe that, every country have their own special elements that are unique. And I think that's the unique particle or entity that exists in America, that works for America.
Indeed.
Right. Secondly, because I've, as a journalist, I follow America, and I mean, not only America, every country all around the world, because we talk about, local, domestic, and international issues all the time. One of the things that I would like to know is, how do you maintain the minority? Because we followed closely what happened post-September 11. And as a Muslim, I follow it quite closely. And I, read about issues that cropped up. How do you maintain that? How do you make sure that, these minorities are not persecuted for something that they have not done?
The fundamental concept in the American Constitution and in American culture is that what freedom of religion means is not only the right of people to live openly and freely with their religious lives, but is the idea that one's rights as a citizen would never depend upon their religious identity, their religious practices, their religious beliefs. So our legal system treats everyone equally, and anyone can run for office, anyone can hold any position in the United States, and often to change the cultural patterns that make people comfortable with it take time. But under the law, that is absolutely protected. So we have people holding virtually every position in so many different religions in the United States. After 9/11, there's always a rise and fall. Every country has challenges that they face to make real the promise of their fundamental legal documents and their cultural aspirations. After 9/11, there was a rise of anti-Muslim attitudes in the United States. But the polls were very clear. That never affected the majority of people in the United States. And whenever you saw communities, for example, try to say, well, we don't want a Muslim community building a mosque, you would find the religious leaders of every religious group in America would stand together in a coalition, a national coalition called Shoulder to Shoulder, an English phrase meaning we stand together. So Shoulder to Shoulder coalition stood up for the right of Muslims to build mosques anywhere that churches, or synagogues, or Buddhist temples, and other houses of worship could be built. And in every case, that prevailed here. So there is, the polls show that the American Muslim community is more integrated into American society, economic, educational, social, cultural society, than in any other country where Muslims are a minority. And that's been the secret of America's success with all its groups, and one of the reasons that there's such a robust Muslim community in America.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I was in one mosque, and what was interesting is that they have a basketball competition constantly, and the teams consist of, the Muslim imams and the Jewish rabbis and the Christian padris. So they play together and become very strong as a community. So I think that's basically what.
There's a lot of that, and in the United States, the Jewish community and the Muslim community tend to be very close. Both are minorities who have live in a country that gives them enormous freedom, and they share a lot of religious and cultural ideas. So kosher food.
So you don't have an opinion about freedom of religion?
No opinion?
Tell me.
Of course I have an opinion.
Religious freedom means to me that you can worship a yellow dog if that's what you so desire.
You have that right as long as you're not trying to hurt other people in doing it.
Religious groups decide for themselves what their followers should be doing.
Freedom of religion is not freedom from religion.
People want voices silenced that are not in agreement with theirs, but they don't want their own voice silenced.
We have to respect everybody, culture, religion, opinion.
If there is a more foundational issue relative to this country, I don't know what it is.
There is a battle over the meaning of that freedom. The contest is of eternal importance, and it is your generation that must understand the issues and make the efforts to prevail.
Religious freedom is the right to practice your faith, to have a faith, and to manifest it publicly and in private.
It's also the right to act and to interact with people of different faiths in a way that's consistent with your religious convictions.
People can make it sound very persuasive that, well, as long as you can believe what you want, then the rest of it doesn't really matter. But if you can't manifest your beliefs, then they lose a great deal of their meaning.
Freedom of conscience is the right to not be forced to do something that violates the truth that God has spoken to your heart. And so it's that freedom of conscience that undergirds this freedom of religion.
I think practicing what we preach is the second priority. So not criticizing other religions, not making fun of other religions, teaching your children to respect other religions, learning about your friends' religious beliefs, and then doing something.
We can go to the internet, We could go to the library. We could get engaged and involved in a local interfaith organization. You feel the brotherhood and you feel the common cause from all the different people, and you feel that we are all children of God.
You don't have to have any special kind of training. All it takes is an interest and a willingness to speak up and be involved.
In the 21st century, we cannot flee any longer. We're going to have to fight for laws and circumstances and environments that allow the free exercise of religion and our franchise in it.
I'm involved in nonprofit work, and I'm currently a student.
Chamber board member for Leavenworth, Washington.
The Interfaith Council in Whatcom County, Washington.
Children's Community Choir.
The Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
I'm part of the food pantry in our community.
I'm president of the Latino Student Association at my school.
On Twitter, I get on and I share the things that I deeply care about.
We don't know when or where the issue is going to come up. There's no way to anticipate that. But the Lord knows, and He's going to help us be in the position to make a difference.
My challenge today is that you join with people of all faiths who feel accountable to God in defending religious freedom so it can be a beacon for morality. We caution you to be civil and responsible as you defend religious liberty and moral values. We ask that you do this on the internet and in your personal interactions in the neighborhoods and communities where you live. Be an active participant, not a silent observer.
My name is Giovanni Chico. I'm a 12th grader in the Kennett High School Consolidated School District. And I've been working at Domino's for a year and a half, and I'm ready to do this interview.
All right, so today we're just gonna ask you a few questions. All right, question number 1. What is your personal opinion on the First Amendment, freedom of religion?
I believe in it. I think that it's great that we have it, and it really brings a fine line to our country compared to other countries, because a lot of countries, religion is built into their law of their government. So I think it's a great thing that we have and a great freedom.
Very good, I agree. All right, question number 2. Should the government make laws promoting certain religions?
No, I don't think they should. I think everyone's entitled to their own, and it's their own business. Like, in my personal opinion, I don't think anyone really cares about religion in the U.S., so I don't think the law should be in our government, just how, like, there's Sharia law in, like, the Muslim areas, I guess you'd say. They have Sharia law built into their government, so I don't think that's right, so I don't think we should have something like that in the U.S.
All right, good answer. Question number 3. Should religion be implemented back into schools?
No, I think that's why we have a difference between public and private. Most private schools are oriented through religion, so I think there's a fine line there. Like, schools are a bureaucracy, so I don't think that the government should have a place into say what your religion is, but I think you should be able to learn about other religions, but it shouldn't be forced on you.
Okay. Question number 4. Is it constitutional to teach about religion in public schools?
I wouldn't say it's unconstitutional, but just to teach about it, then yeah, I think you have the right to teach about it, but as long as you're not promoting or forcing a religion onto a student or degrading one's religion because you don't believe in it or something like that, I think it's constitutional as long as it's just being taught.
All right, very good. Thank you for your time, Giovanni.
Thank you, Mr. Christopher.